Welcome back to Spill the Beans podcast. I am so excited to have you here. Let's get into it.
Hey guys, welcome back. It's me, Beans, and this is my podcast, Spill the Beans. Today, I just want to start off with saying what I am grateful for, and what I am really, truly grateful for is my grandmother had cancer, and within the past couple of days, I was just informed that she is officially cancer-free. So, that is great, that is amazing. I am super, uber happy about this, and just so thankful. So, that is what I am grateful for. And also you guys who support me, who watch my videos here on my podcast and on my TikTok. I just appreciate all of the support that you guys give me all of the time. But today's podcast is going to be about spirituality, what it is not, how one usually gets into spirituality, and just a whole bunch of different things that relate to that. Just basically the basics of it all. Fun little fact here is this basically everything that I'm going to be mentioning in this podcast. I was supposed to start a class, right? A basics to spirituality class, and I ended up not starting it. So everything that I'm going to be mentioning in this podcast comes from basically the first lesson or PowerPoint of that class that I was supposed to teach. So hopefully you enjoy it. Hopefully it goes well. We will see. But what I want to start off with is what spirituality is not.
Spirituality is not being better than everyone else or being perfect or always having the answer. It's not trying to escape your feelings. It's not always being happy or even being able to manifest anything and everything that you want.
A lot of people sometimes they get into spirituality because they think it's going to magically fix all of their problems and make everything perfect, and that is not the case. Just because you get into spirituality doesn't mean that, okay, you never experience anything bad in your life, you never experience any bad emotions or negative emotions. Spirituality is simply just a tool, right? A tool to help you navigate life, a tool to help you deal with any of the emotions that you may feel, any of the chaos that comes your way. It's just there to help you process and deal with and manage life, right? So it doesn't automatically make everything perfect and everything better, and it doesn't mean that nothing bad is ever going to happen, and sometimes that's what people think. So it's important to come into spirituality with the right mindset, right? Sometimes people are like, well, if I know enough about spirituality, maybe I can make sure that nothing bad ever happens, and that's just not the case. And oftentimes people think the same thing with witchcraft. And it's important to, like I said, be realistic and know exactly what you're getting into. Also, going into spirituality doesn't mean that you're always going to have the answer to everything. Sometimes people are like, oh, okay, this means that I'm going to know everything and have the answer to everything. And that's just not the case. You will still have moments where you're lost, you're confused, but in those lost and confused moments, you will know what to do. You'll be like, okay, here's what I'm going to do in order to deal with this lost feeling. Here's what I'm going to do in order to deal with being confused, you know? So it helps you manage being lost and confused and not knowing. So it doesn't mean, oh, I have the answer all of the time, always. So those are just some things that I want you guys to keep in mind if you're just getting started with spirituality, or it sometimes you need the reminder, like, hey, this is what it's not. Let me be realistic about what I'm doing here. Let me be realistic about what my goals are. Also, spirituality is a very personal practice, right? It's different from person to person, and it's influenced by a lot of different things. It's influenced by religion. It can be influenced by what's around you, your home, growing up, surroundings, your environment. It is influenced by so much. So when you meet someone else who's also into spirituality, their version of spirituality versus your version of spirituality may not be the same. It may be drastically different, and that's okay because there is no right or wrong way to do spirituality. And I love that, right? So if your spirituality is based off of religion, that is 100% okay. You know, if you're like, yes, my spirituality is surrounded by Christianity or Hinduism or no religion at all. It's based off of nature. That is 100% okay. That is beautiful. That is amazing. And they're all correct. So what's important is, number one, it's important to take a moment to figure out, what is spirituality to you, right? What is spiritual to you, right? Is being out in nature spiritual? Is sitting down meditating spiritual? Is, I don't know, reading the Bible spiritual? What is spiritual to you? What are some spiritual things that you could do? And that's super important, because it gives you a basis of, like, okay, here's my own very definition of spirituality. So when I'm feeling lost, when I'm feeling disconnected to myself, to spirit, here are some things that I can do in order to help me regain that connection, to help me feel more grounded in that sense. So taking a moment to be like, okay, let me define my own version of spirituality, so that way I have this sort of basis of where I can start from. um Many people actually start their spiritual journey with a spiritual awakening. A spiritual awakening is basically just a shift in your mental framework, right? It's a mental shift in the way that you perceive everything around you in your environment. And this can happen for many different reasons.
Here are just a few of the potential signs that you may be having a spiritual awakening. These are just a select few, not all, and just because you may have some of these things or you may feel some of these things doesn't mean that you are definitely going through a spiritual awakening, but they definitely can lead to one.
It could be like something traumatic happened, some sort of loss happened. It could be random, right? It could be like, okay, I'm feeling unsatisfied in my job. Usually there's this feeling of, I'm very discontent with what's going on around me, and I feel lost, I feel confused, I feel unsatisfied, and that leads to this shift in what I used to enjoy, what I used to connect with, what used to bring me some sense of comfort and stability no longer does, right? So then you have to go through this whole process of being like, okay, why do these things no longer bring me comfort? Why do these things no longer bring me joy? And how can I refine that joy in my life? And that's usually because there's a spiritual awakening. You're like, okay, I need to shift my priorities. I need to shift my focus. I need to shift my mind frame, so that way I can be more happy. So that way I can fulfill my purpose. So that way I can be more aligned with who I want to be. And that's usually how that happens. And what's so interesting is, this spiritual awakening can happen multiple times throughout your lifetime, right? It's not like, oh, one and done. No, this could be something where it's like, I've had 5 spiritual awakenings in the past 5 years. So don't don't be too alarmed if it's like, well, I used to be really connected with this, and then all of a sudden I'm not, and then I had sort of another spiritual awakening, and now I'm on this other whole different path, because it happens, right? And there is no shame in that game. Sometimes you only are into something for a season, right? But that season of it will still help you learn. It'll still help you grow. It'll still help you align with your path. So if you're only into something, if you're only doing something for a season, enjoy that season. Take what you can from it, and don't be afraid to change things up if that is needed. Typically, when you go through these spiritual awakenings, you also have to let go of what is around you, whether it be the people that's around you, the job, the environment, the mentality. There is a sense of letting go that needs to happen. But in order to let go, you have to first be able to face the truth that's in front of you. You have to be like, okay, let me face this situation with reality. Let me be honest with myself. Let me be truthful in the fact that what is in front of me, what is going on, is no longer bringing me happiness. It's no longer bringing me joy. And sometimes we can get stuck in the fact that said thing used to bring us joy. Sometimes we get so caught up in how something used to make us feel, or what things used to be, that we're like, maybe if I could just bring that back, maybe if I could do this, it'll come back. And that's not the case most of the time, right? You can't bring something back. You can only evolve with the future. And so it's important to not get super caught up in how something used to make you feel and how something used to go. You have to be honest with yourself about what is going on right now in this moment, right? And usually the truth about what's going on right now in this moment is, it is not bringing you happiness. It is not making you feel safe. It's not making you feel comfortable. It's not aligning with who you are. and you have to do something about that. And being honest about that can be very hard. It can be painful, because it's so much easier to be like, well, if I just do this, if I just do that, maybe I can bring it back. But like I said, you can't really bring things back. You can just evolve and grow and make something new, right? And hopefully that something new will be better than what it was. What's important in coming to this conclusion is just speaking things out loud, right? Sometimes we get afraid to like actually be honest with ourselves and speak it, because if we say it, then it makes it true. But that's the point. Sometimes we need to be like, let me say this, let me write this down, let me just put this out, because number one, once you release it, once you say it, it releases it. You're not holding on to so much weight anymore. You're not holding on to all of these ideas and all of these thoughts. So it's a form of letting go in a way, just speaking about it, just saying it, just being honest with yourself out loud verbally can really help. And you may not know this, but words have power, right? Your words have power, right? Speaking the truth is always so powerful, So like I said, just saying what things are and speaking it's a form of power where you're giving yourself power. You're not letting the situation hold anything over you. You're not letting the situation make you scared or nervous. So step into your own power and say what things are. Just be like, I'm not going to let this hold me hostage by holding on to some sort of idea, by letting this idea or thought hold me captive. And what's important to keep in mind in all of this is anything that causes you physical, emotional, spiritual, or mental harm should be reevaluated, and maybe you should step away from that.
These are just some small list and examples of things that if you're experiencing any of these things, then there definitely needs to be some reevaluation going on within your environment, the people who you're around, the people who you're talking to, what you're doing, because this is causing you some sort of harm and or discomfort.
These are all things where it could be something that needs to be reevaluated, or you should look at what's causing these feelings around you. On the same thought process of needing to let go, here are some things that could potentially help you let go, right? Like I said, just speaking it out loud, writing it down on paper, crying is incredibly healing. Being physically active, punching a pillow. Don't punch a wall or anything, because we're not trying to hurt ourselves. But punching something that won't actually bring you harm, right? You can go into a rage room if you have a whole bunch of anger and pent up emotions that you need to let out. Putting yourself first is incredibly important, and it's a form of I need to let go of putting everyone else first, putting everyone else's needs before mine, and just being like, I'm important too. I deserve to be taken care of, and I'm going to start with taking care of myself. Having support, talking to friends, talking to family, those types of things. Giving yourself some self-compassion, forgiving yourself and or others. Making something and being creative. It's incredibly helpful in letting go. There are some people that, like, when they draw, it tends to help them release any emotions or energy that they've been holding on to. So if you're the creative type of person, that could really help you in letting go of any pent up emotions or feelings. And then obviously shadow work. But like I said before, shadow work is a type of trauma work. So, just keep that one in mind. The thing about spirituality is it benefits you greatly to understand your own emotions, right? Because when you get into spirituality, you tend to tap into energy, other people's energy, your own energy, the energy of the universe. There's a lot of things that are going on, and it helps to differentiate, okay, what am I feeling right now? Is this a feeling of my emotions? Is this a spirit? Is this my spirit guides? Is this nature? Like, what is this feeling that I'm feeling, right? But you can't do that if you have trouble identifying what's going on inside of you. So it helps you to be able to identify your own emotions, which you would be surprised many people don't know how to identify their own emotions, right? Sometimes you ask people how they're feeling and they're like, I have no idea, right? I don't know how I feel on any day, on any occasion, for anything. And that can be very difficult, right? It can be difficult to have a conversation with someone who has no emotional knowledge, really. But the first step in trying to really get a good understanding of your emotions is number one, expanding your emotional vocabulary. There are some people who the only concepts of emotion they have is like, oh, well, there's mad, and then there's sad, and then there's happy. But there are so many other emotions than that. There's irritated, there's frustrated, there's disappointed, there's lonely, there's excited, right? Exuberated. So expanding your emotional vocabulary can help you in being like, okay, how am I feeling in this moment? Am I feeling happy? What type of happy, right? Am I feeling joyful? Am I feeling playful? Uh, am I sad? Why am I sad? Am I feeling lonely? Am I feeling depressed? Am I feeling disappointed? Like, what exactly is making me feel the emotions that I'm feeling? Am I feeling angry? Am I feeling irritated? Am I feeling grounded? Am I feeling powerful? Like, am I feeling peaceful? Am I feeling content? So it just really benefits you to be like, let me take a moment and just think about how I'm really feeling, you know? And what I would actually recommend you do is like a couple of days a week, just take a moment and be like, what am I feeling? Right? And if it helps you, look at an emotion wheel chart, right? I have an emotion wheel chart just to be like, what am I feeling? Right? And just be like, okay, am I feeling this emotion? You know, like, how do I feel at this moment? And it helps you just start to be better at emotional regulation. And regulating your emotions can be a lot because sometimes the emotions just become overpowering and overbearing. And sometimes they change very quickly, right? So, number one, identifying the emotions helps greatly in emotional regulation. And then once you've gotten comfortable with identifying emotions, then that's when you're like, okay, well, why am I feeling this emotion? Like, what's making me feel this emotion? Like, let's say I'm feeling joyful. What's making me feel joyful right now? Is it being outside in nature that's really making me feel joyful? Is it hanging out with my friends that are making me feel joyful? If I'm feeling irritated, what's making me feel irritated? Is it the people who are around me that are making me feel irritated? Is it I potentially stub my toe and that's making me feel irritated, you know? So then comes the question of why do I feel this emotion? Once we've gotten comfortable with identifying the whys of the emotions, sometimes you may want to change a certain emotion. And if you know why or how something causes you to feel a certain way, it's easy to change it, right? Like we feel content when we're around family, right? So if we're feeling lonely, let's go around family to stop feeling so lonely, you know? So knowing why you feel a certain way can help you when you're feeling an emotion that you don't want to feel and you're like, well, how do I stop feeling this emotion? Right? Well, what's an emotion that I do want to feel and what makes me feel that emotion? So it can be incredibly important and incredibly helpful in understanding your emotions and figuring out, okay, what emotion am I feeling? Why? How? And that sounds easy, but it can be difficult. So it can take some time to really work on and hone on. So take it one week at a time. You know, like I said, just start with identifying emotions. Just be like, what am I feeling today? You know? And after a while of doing that, be like, okay, what is making me feel this emotion? You know? And I promise you that will work wonders for you. You will really be able to have an emotional intelligence and emotional understanding. And it'll help you when things are being stressful and chaotic. So do what you will with that information.
An exercise that can help you in trying to identify emotions is every once in a while, once a day, once a week, whatever, take a moment and just name as many emotions as you can. Just write them down. Just start spinning them out. Be like, okay, let me just see if I can name 10 emotions. Let me see if I can name 15 emotions. Or you can be like, let me see if I can name 5 different emotions that mean happy. right? Let me see if I can name 5 different emotions that mean angry. Let me see if I can name 5 different emotions that mean sad, you know? And those will help you build your emotional vocabulary, and that will help you in learning to identify what you are feeling in any given moment. So, do what you will with that information. Hopefully, that helps you, and I hope this helps you on your spiritual journey.
And in that same thought of like trying to understand emotions, you can have a journal, you can write it down in your journal of like, okay, how am I feeling today? Or if you're like, I don't know how I'm feeling today, figure out how a certain song makes you feel. Be like, when I listen to this song, it makes me feel this set emotions. Or when I watch this movie, it makes me feel this set emotion, right? If you're like, well, I don't know exactly how I'm feeling in this moment, try and bring forth something that you do know, where it's like this song makes me feel sad or lonely or happy or excited. So, and that could really be beneficial to you. That's basically all I have for this podcast. It's a small, short podcast. And my goal here's my plan, right? My plan is to have 2 podcasts that come out in this month. And the next podcast is going to be more about letting go. And we're going to go in depth about that because I feel like for the end of this year, I think it's important that we let go and release anything that may be holding us back, any sadness, any distress, so that way we don't end up bringing that energy into the next year. So the next podcast is going to be on skills, ways to do that, so that way we can start the new year on a good foot, so that way we can hopefully have a clean slate with some new energy and we can do our best in this next year. So, that is all I have for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. And this was just a simple, short, sweet one.